So everybody, thank you and welcome to this Preparing Future Faculty event on the Effective Job Talk. This is our second event for the Spring 2016 semester. If you're unfamiliar with the Preparing Future Faculty program and the certificate, there's information in the back of the room if you wanted to grab. There's a one-page flyer with information. It's open to all graduate students at the university, so something to definitely think about availing yourself to. We have a really, really good agenda. We've got two great speakers, and then Fred is going to lead us in more of an interactive type workshop. So I open the floor to both of our presenters, and then Fred. All right.
Thank you, So folks, I'm James Paulson. I am in the psychology department. And what we'll be doing, I'm co-presenting this with Mona Danner. And so Dr. Danner and I will be kind of splitting midway through, but we may kind of each jump in partway through the talk. So what we'll be talking about this afternoon is just the whole process of a faculty job search. So from the very beginning to the negotiation, if everything goes well and you get in the position of actually having an offer and negotiating, we'll talk about that whole process. And I'll talk about the first part. Dr. Danner will talk about the second part. And I think as long as it's okay with the format, folks, you can jump in with questions as we're going. I think we're both looking at that. So I don't know if this will be a masterful talk, because I haven't learned how to give a masterful talk yet. But I'll do my very best to use all the best words, right, in all the right places, and we'll make academia great again. Okay, so in terms of this process of a job search, right, how do we think about this process from the beginning? And I think the best place to start is really thinking about who you are as a future faculty candidate, as a job applicant in a faculty position. So who are you as a future faculty member? Are you a researcher? Are you a teacher? Are you a mentor? Are you some combination of those? What is your area? What is your specific direction in terms of your program of research? All of these are very important questions to ask yourself as you're preparing for this job search position. But what's implied in that question of who you are and what are your goals is what are you looking for? What do you want in terms of a position? What do you want in terms of an institution that you're working with? And even questions that might not be part of the conversation as you're interviewing, as you're talking to search committee members and other faculty members, are things like location, right? Close proximity to family. Do you want to live in Miami, or are you okay living in Fargo, North Dakota? I mean, what are your preferences in terms of that? And those all should come into play in your thought process as you're thinking about this job application and this faculty position search. And inherent in that as well is your goal. So what do you want to see for your future career? Do you want to develop a thriving program of research? Are you interested in primarily a teaching position? And all of those have to line up correctly with the jobs that you're applying for. The way, from the perspective of serving on a faculty search committee, the way that we think about this, and I think the way that applicants sometimes don't, is that a faculty search really is a matchmaking process. We're trying not to find the person who checks off all the right boxes, right? It's great to have very good qualifications. In fact, sometimes it's very important. But if you're not a good fit with a program, with a faculty position, with an existing department, you're not going to get the job. You might not even if you have great qualifications, you might not even get an invitation to interview. You might just get a letter saying, no, thank you, we're not interested in you. It's about fit. And that process of establishing fit is something that's important for the search committee that will ultimately be making many of the decisions around moving that process forward. And it's important for you as well. Because if you end up in a job that's a poor fit, you're going to be miserable, and you're going to make the people around you miserable, and it's going to be a loss for everybody. So in having a conversation with about this, Mona said, no job is better than a worse job. No job is better than a bad job, right? So having a job that fits poorly is really an invitation for disaster. Right? It's bad news, and that's what faculty search committees are really looking for. The way I think about this in terms of engaging with this whole process, from the very beginning, from what you're searching for, from looking at job ads, through preparing your CV and your letters and your statements and giving your talk, is this is a process of developing a narrative. And this is my own way of thinking about it. This is the kind of thing that I nag my students about is, when you talk about these things, when you talk about your research, when you talk about you as an applicant, you as a researcher, you're really developing a narrative. And it's that narrative that folks who you interview with and search committees remember. Right? So they think of you as, oh, well, she's that person who comes from this place, who does these kinds of things, and has these kinds of plans. It all fits into some sort of linear flow. So when you think about this process, think about that little linear flow and that story of who you are and where you're headed. Now, of course, this talk is very generic. Right? I come at it from the perspective of psychology. I try to strip some of those elements out of it, but you need to pay attention to very field-specific requirements, norms, and expectations, and those are going to vary a lot. And I really can't speak to fields outside of my own. Okay, so the very first step, beyond determining that you have the motivation and the intention to pursue an academic job, is reading a job ad. Now in 2016, these are very easy to come by. Jobs tend to be advertised in relatively uniform places, at least in psychology, and I get the sense that these are relatively easy to access in most fields. So the first task here in determining what you want to do and what you need to do to apply for a position is reading the job ad. And this is not as simple and transparent as it might seem, and it's something that I've seen folks as they're applying for academic jobs go wrong in. So when you look at this, when you look at a job ad, you're thinking about the type of position, what are the requirements, and the requirements that are listed in a job ad go beyond things that they just really, really want, right? That a position that's being hired for really desires, and in many cases, those are things that you absolutely have to have. That's certainly the case with faculty searches here. If we list requirements on a job ad, we need to make sure that an applicant meets all those requirements, or they can't move forward. Right? So, what are the requirements? What are preferences? And now these are the things that we want. We'd really like to see in applicants, but we don't necessarily have to have, or that we have more flexibility on. What are the details of the job? So, what will you be doing? What does the ad tell you about that? What kind of institution, and what's the deadline? Right? And this is even the deadline is not necessarily entirely straightforward. So, I know this is a little bit small, and I apologize for this, but this is an ad for our department for a developmental psychology position that was posted last year, and this process is run this year. So I just want to walk through this really quickly in terms of breaking this apart and some things that you might consider as you're looking at a job ad. The first piece here is that this is for a tenured track assistant or associate professor position. Right? So we actually have two ranks that we're potentially hiring into, and this is significant because an assistant professor and an associate professor are very different people on the job market. So pay attention to that, and this might tell you something about where the department is and what they're looking for. And then requirements. So for this position, we had to establish that an applicant, to move forward, had a PhD or doctoral degree in developmental psychology, human development, or something equivalent. Right? So some of the folks that actually were eliminated during this process didn't have degrees that were explicitly enough consistent with developmental psychology, because obviously we're hiring for a developmental psychologist position. Now, here's the other thing, and this is where, in the ad, there's actually differentiation in the requirements for assistant versus associate. For assistants, for the assistant level, we had to see a demonstration of strong potential for developing independent, outstanding research and teaching. So what this gives us as a committee is guidance on what we need to look at in the applicant and their qualifications and their experiences. We don't have to have any very specific box check, but we have to be able to say, okay, well, this person does have some significant scholarly productivity. They published in the peer-reviewed literature. They're seeking grants, or they've been awarded grants. So this is more of a softer set of requirements. On the other hand, for associate applicants, and this is where this differentiation is very important, we require substantial research accomplishment, peer-reviewed publications, grants, and current active competitive grants. So this is a very specific requirement, and actually this eliminated a number of folks who were interested in the associate level position because they didn't have active grants. So very specific requirements sometimes appear in ads, and you need to pay attention to them, because if you're thinking about applying for that associate position and you don't have a current active grant, we'll just stop. Right? You're not likely to be very successful if you're applying to something where the requirement is not met. And these are, the key word here, and I know this is small, again, I apologize, is must. You must do these things, you must meet these requirements. The second are preferences. And this is important to pay attention to because this helps you to craft and tailor your letter and your application. So preferences are given to folks whose research complements the existing faculty. So what does that tell you as an applicant? What do you need to do? Right? You need to do your homework. Right? You need to check out the current faculty, look at the current research, maybe do a search to see what's being funded or what's been recently funded in that department. And then we're also looking for some other specific general areas, but these are not hard requirements. These are just characteristics that kind of move the needle in the direction of positive. Okay, other piece, right? Responsibilities. So this is what the job is involved, or what's involved in the job. So it involves supporting an undergraduate curriculum, teaching courses potentially online. So that's an important part of our department, what's growing. And then mentoring MS and PhD students. So what this tells you is that this is a graduate faculty. We're looking for somebody to join that graduate faculty and mentor folks seeking graduate degrees. A little bit about the department, right? So we have 31, so we're a mid-sized department. We have lots of undergrads. We have a significant number of grad students. So again, this underscores that there's a significant amount of graduate student mentoring, and that's valued in the program. And then you could see this is just mentioned here, and this almost seems like a throwaway line, but this tells you again about what the priorities are of the department. That faculty research is currently funded by NIAAA, NIDA, NSF, and various other entities. That this is a value of the department, and this is a value that's going to be held up while evaluating applicants. That we want folks who are either research grant active or who have aspirations and specific plans for that. Okay, last piece here, and this seems transparent, right? The deadline or the timeline suggests applicants will be reviewed beginning October 15th, 2015. Some folks read this and think, okay, well, they'll start October 15th, so I have leeway. I can, if it's October 20th, I can send my stuff in. I don't have to be particularly timely around that time frame. But what I can tell you in general is that this should be looked at as a deadline. What will happen after that point in time, and actually what happened with us, is that I think we met on October 16th to look at the applications that had come in. Right? And that's consistent with the ad, right? Application review began after October 15th, and we began literally the day after October 15th. So if your application wasn't in that initial pile, right, it's not going to get that first pass review. Now, we did look at other applications that came in later, but the way that affected how they were reviewed, I would say, is probably a general negative. So look at this application review beginning at a certain time as a deadline to get all your material. Okay. In terms of preparing your CV, this is something that I imagine most or all of you have some significant experience with that. CVs tend to have a format that varies a little bit from field to field, so do pay attention to the norms of your field. But as you're putting this together, the CV is more than just a record of your accomplishments for you. This is something that you want to be readable. Right? So pay attention to formatting and how you structure things, how it's how descriptions are provided with the reader in mind. Format there's no specific requirement for format in a CV. There are some fairly strongly held conventions for CV format, but you don't have to have it in this or that format. There's not a long-standing, hard and fast rule for how you format your CV. So this gives you some room to be creative in how you format your CV to really express kind of who you are, what are your strengths, what have you done, and what in your work is really relevant for this position that you're applying to. And there's no fault, there's no deception in customizing a CV for a position that you're applying to. So you want to tell your story the best through that route. CVs offer a lot of room for detail. Right? There's no page limit for CVs. I've seen CVs for people with similar accomplishments that are 15 pages and 70 pages. Bonus nodding, right? So folks really do these in varied ways, and sometimes folks offer a lot of details. My recommendation would be to tell your story in a way that is clearest, that offers the right level of details, but avoid padded bullshit. Right? And there's a temptation to just fluff up a CV, and I've seen a lot of folks just add detail, make yourself look good. Often with manuscripts and preparation, that's an area where that happens a lot. And what I would suggest is that faculty search committees have really keen bullshit detectors. So avoid padded, fluffy bullshit. You know what I'm saying. Letter of application. So this is really the first communication to the site where you're applying, and this is generally read before anything else is read. And this is your opportunity really to say, why are you applying? Who are you in brief? Right? In a few sentences, who are you? What kind of work have you done? What kind of researcher are you? What kind of teacher are you? But keep it brief, keep it concise. In this letter of application, this really is your best opportunity to describe how well you fit with that site. So describe aspects of your work, aspects of your interests, aspects of the advertisement that you really fit with well, and really use this to bang down this idea that you're a really good fit with the place where you're applying to. Generally, outside of the interviews, and in-person or phone conversations, you don't get many other opportunities to describe fit. You can imply it in a research statement or a teaching statement, but it's hard to say it very explicitly. Keep this, and generally most of your statements and written works pithy. Keep it tight, concise. Don't send a 5-page letter of application. That would be excessive. A one-page letter, a 2-page letter is probably just the right length. Okay. So in a research statement, this is a place to really expand on who you are as a researcher. What is the theme of your research? And how has your work up to that point, up to the point of application, how has that really contributed to your identity as a researcher? And your ideas and focus in terms of program of research. With this, the research statements that I've seen that have been poorer or more problematic are scattered. Right? I've done this, and I'm interested in that, and here's like areas 1 through 7 of my research interests, and this is I want to do a million different things. Those are problematic, right? Because the more you add in terms of different themes, the more difficult it is to find the thread that ties it all together. So you're looking for a coherent document that might have different areas, but probably not more than 2 or 3 areas at the most, but all that fit together in one unitary theme. So you really want to pay attention to this thread that ties this research statement together into a coherent program. What's really important with this is that you build this case for who you are as a researcher and what the theme of your program of research is, and then use that as a launching point to talk about where that program of research is going. That's a very important part of the research statement, is outlining where you're going next. And with that, you can talk about the next several studies that you're going to do. You could talk about grants that you're going to apply to. You can talk about publications that are in the works or collaborations that have been formed to support research moving into the future. But it is very important that you talk about and justify where you're going as a researcher and where your program of research is building to. Often the timeline for this, I would think generally the 5-year timeline is the most important, but thoughts about moving out to 10 years or beyond is a reasonable time frame to attend to with more focus on the near term. This statement, depending on the kinds of, if you're applying to multiple positions, if they're all the same, okay, your statement can be relatively similar from one application to the next, but this can be tailored uniquely to each position, and there are some advantages to doing that if you're applying to a place where you see potential collaborations with faculty there. Or you see your research working synergistically with other research in that program, you can use the research statement to specifically describe how that synergy might take place, how that collaboration might take place. Okay, teaching statement of philosophy. So this is generally required in academic jobs. And I think about this in 3 different parts. And again, this is the way James thinks about it. Other folks might approach it in different ways. But I think of this as, first, what is your teaching philosophy? So do you think about teaching from a specific pedagogical model, right? So, for example, if you're interested in collaborative learning as a vehicle for graduate learning, right? That might be something that you describe very specifically. You can even include a reference or two. That might be overkill, but it's not unreasonable to do that, depending on the job. Talk about how that overall pedagogy applies to specific teaching methods. And for most jobs, it's generally important to talk about differentiation for different groups, including students with disabilities. So talking about how you differentiate your teaching approach to those different groups of folks can be critical in a teaching philosophy. From here, I think talking about more concrete details. So what have you taught? How has that informed your teaching approach? And how has that informed specifically what kind of teaching you'd like to do in the future? And generally what I've seen is that teaching statements will describe courses that that individual is interested in teaching. So if you have interest in teaching some very specific courses, it's a good idea to talk about that. And often course needs are part of what the advertisement is. Right? So a faculty might be looking for somebody to teach a particular class or a particular area. Or like with our advertisement, we're looking for folks who could teach statistics classes. Right? So that's important to us. With this, my suggestion is to try to find kind of a Goldilocks level of specificity with courses that you would be interested in teaching. So not too specific, like super specialized courses are, a search committee might look at if I were applying and said, well, I'm going to offer a course in family transitions from late prenatal to the early infancy. I have a lot of expertise in that area, but there's no way a course like that is going to get the enrollment or meet basic faculty or basic program needs. So I'm not going to be able to make that work, and it's going to seem naive to offer that in a statement. So offer something general that fits with their curriculum, and hopefully you've looked at that and done your homework before you make those kinds of suggestions. Okay. And once you put this application in, there's a temptation to email the search committee, and this is fine to do to a very limited extent. So avoid nagging emails like every week or every 2 weeks. I would suggest, your limit is probably 2 or 3 emails asking for updates. A faculty search at a university, at most universities, has its own timeline, and it moves forward. And folks don't, in some other areas, folks might get busy with other things, and they put something aside, and it's beneficial to remind them of that, right? This doesn't work that way, right? This has its own driving timeline, and nag emails won't be especially helpful. Mona will talk about this more, but if you get a call or get an invitation to do an interview with a search committee member, generally the best approach is to say, oh, well, I'm very interested in talking to you. I'm busy with this or that right now, but let's schedule a time to talk so you have an opportunity to prepare. Generally, spontaneous phone contact is something to minimize and plan for. So any of that contact might be part of the search process, and it might have an impact on how things go. Here.
Thank you. I want to begin by telling you that I have been at Old Dominion for 22 years, but I've got 30 years of experience teaching. I have applied for jobs. I have gotten jobs. I have been rejected from jobs in academia. We have searched nearly every single year I've been here. I have been on those departmental search committees. I have probably seen 100 job talks and that many candidates. I have literally looked through thousands and thousands of portfolio materials for applications. So I'm just saying, plus I've done a ton of reading and I've done a lot of training. So I'm just telling you that because I want you to know that myself and James and Fred and we know what we're talking about. And then the second thing I want to say is congratulations to every one of you for being smart enough to be here. To be here and to come and get this information that we are offering to you free. Of course, you can look for stuff on the web and you can learn about it, or you can pay somebody $100 an hour for this. So first of all, congratulations to you for being here. You've done a ton of work. You made these applications. You've been searching for through job ads, you've written your letters, you've written your CVs. It's a part-time job to look for a job. So you've got to make that commitment and be aware of it. And oh, by the way, you're probably teaching classes or working in a lab, and then you might be taking classes, but you're absolutely working on your dissertation. This is a very dynamic and demanding time in your life. So just telling you that. And the best way to survive it is by staying in touch with your friends, your colleagues, the other graduate students, and your faculty here at Old Dominion University. We've all been through it. Let's go through it together. It makes it so much easier. You've gotten the call that you're on the short list. They want to talk to you on the phone or on Skype, increasingly on Skype. If they ask you for your preference, say the telephone. Because here's the thing about a Skype interview. You don't control what's going on behind you sometimes, and Skype is yet another layer of technology that can trip up. You don't want them being distracted by whatever you look like or what's going on behind you or those technological glitches. Nor do you want to be distracted by them. So if they give you a choice, say, the telephone is fine. You might even say, my Skype has been acting up. So if you don't care, I'd love a telephone. If they say they do Skype interviews, then that's what you do. When you get the calls and they say, we'd like to schedule a time to talk with you for a phone interview, you say, great, you identify the time. If they give you some choices, the first thing you want to think of is, when am I at my best? And if they say, we can either talk with you at 8 a.m. or 2 p.m., and you are not a morning person, choose that 2 p.m. Do whatever you can to maximize what's going to make you look the best and sound the best. The second thing is, it's always smart to ask, how much time should I plan for this interview? I've been on interviews where people, or been part of an interview process where people thought that we had 2 or 3 hours scheduled for them, and we had 30 minutes, and they just kept talking. So you want to ask the question, how much time should I plan for this? So you know. When that, and I'm going to say this because I'm jumping ahead, but I want to go ahead and say it. When the conversation begins on the phone, you want to ask, I just want to be clear, we've scheduled 30 minutes, yes, and can you tell me how many questions there are? So that way you know if there are 2 questions or 13 questions. It helps you gauge your response. And that's important. You don't want to spend 15 minutes on question number 1 in a 30-minute interview with 7 more questions to go. Prepare. Make sure whatever equipment you're using, if it's Skype or a phone, is working. Make sure that you've got control of your environment so you are not distracted. These are generally the questions you're going to be asked. When they ask you, why are you interested in this position? If the first thing out of your mouth is, oh, I'm from Kansas City and I'd give anything to go back there. Well, that might be the truth, but that doesn't meet their needs. You want to focus on them. The University of Missouri Kansas City is well known for its work in criminology and criminal justice. Your faculty's research on sentencing policy is right in line with my own work. I would welcome the opportunity to be there and be part of you. Whatever. You want to figure out what their needs are. These are generally the questions you're going to be asked. You're going to be asked maybe some others. I'm not going to give you a whole list because I'll tell you what, every single one of you in this room is a researcher. Every single one of you can Google how to prepare for a job interview or an academic job interview. There are books and there are tons of sites. So, you can do that work, and you should read a bunch of them just so you sort of filters down and things, and you're prepared for it. They're gonna ask you what makes you qualified. They're gonna ask about your teaching and research experience. And they're probably going to ask you about where you are in your dissertation. If you are not yet done, they're going to ask you. And your answer better be the same answer that your chair is going to give. Okay? Because they're going to call your chair. And so you want to make sure it's the same answer and it's honest answer. The final question, they're going to ask you 2 final questions, one of which we're increasingly seeing and we ask. And it's, if you were to be offered the job, Is there anything that would keep you from accepting it? And that is the moment where if you have a partner hire, if you have a partner who's also in the field or in a different field, that is the moment to say something like, absolutely, I'd be very interested in that job. I do have a partner who is a chemical engineer. So if there is anything for my partner at your university, that would make this job so much more interesting to me. Now, there are two schools of thought. Some people say, oh no, you never bring your personal life into this. But I gotta tell you, we all got personal lives. And ignoring that reality is just foolishness. And if you're not gonna come unless you can get a job for your partner, please tell me that up front. Because then from that moment on, I start making overtures to chemical engineering. Because if you wait to tell me about your partner, once I've made you the job offer, we just delay the process. Because that stuff takes time. I gotta find out who the chair of that department is. I gotta find out if they've got a job. I gotta find out about your partner. I gotta do a lot of work. So if that would keep you from taking my job after I've done all this work to get you there to my university, tell me up front so that I can make that preparation. The other question that you're going to be asked is, do you have any questions for us? And so you want to ask some questions, just a couple. And and a good one is, what are you looking for in this hire? What do you want the most? And then you write down whatever they say, because that's important information. And you might want to use that information then when you get the actual on-campus interview to remind them about what they want and that you offer that. It's also okay at that point to ask about what's the teach load. It's also okay to ask about what their timeline is. You don't generally ask the salary or the salary range unless they've been telling you things that tell you you're not interested in the job. But generally speaking, salary waits till later. Practice. There is absolutely nothing that you can do more than practice, and practice out loud. Practice how you're going to answer these questions. Practice how you're going to ask these questions. Practice in front of your friends, in front of your colleagues. You might even ask your professor if they would mind listening to you say a couple of things. Write it out, script it out, so that you're prepared and those words just flow right off your tongue. Oh my God, you did a fabulous phone interview, and now we want to invite you on campus. And you set up the dates. This is the moment to tell them before you get to campus if you have any special needs. If you broke your foot and you're on crutches, tell them so that the person who picks you up isn't picking you up in a Miata where there's no place for the crutches. If you are in a wheelchair, if you are a new mother and you are nursing and you need time to pump, tell them none of this is new to us. Okay? But we need to know so that we can schedule time for these kinds of things. If you can get the schedule in advance, that's nice to have. It's rare that you'll get it because we're often doing the schedule the night before because we can't quite pin the dean down on a time. You will be exhausted. For one thing, you're smiling the whole time, and you would never believe how much these cheeks hurt. Yes, they say it's easier to smile than to frown, but it's exhausting to smile nonstop, and you're constantly on. And if you're an introvert, it kills you, and you got to do it anyways. But just be prepared for the exhaustion. So know what you need to do. Make sure you get good sleep. If you need coffee at 2 o'clock or somebody's going to die, tell them so that you get that. You're going to have a lot of meetings with a wide variety of people. Always, always, always ask them questions, and don't ask them questions like, well, what do you like best about me? Ask them questions about themselves. What is your research area? What do you like to teach? You walk into someone's office, look at their bookshelves. You look around them. You are learning information about them. Oh my gosh, I see you like border collies. I used to have a border collie. Make a personal connection. I will tell you that we've had excellent scholars come into our department who do not get the job because they never ask any single person in the department a single question about themselves. I do not want to work with someone who is completely uninterested in anybody but themselves. Okay? Some of the most important people are the other assistant professors. Ask them, what do you like most about being here? Are there any particular challenges? Is there anything I should know? Because those people are closest to you, because they're recent graduates, okay, and they're brand new here, and they can tell you some things. They might tell you, I want you to know, get anything they offer you in writing, because they told me they'd give me X, Y, and Z, and they lied on all of it. Or they might tell you something like, you know, I read online that the cost of living here is 20% higher than the national average, and that was just wrong. It's not. So talk to those people. And again, prepare and practice. There is no substitution for that. When you give your job talk and your teaching demonstration, again, you want to get and give details in advance. How much time will I have? Does that include time for questions? Can you tell me about the equipment? I will need PowerPoint, or I only use a Mac, or whatever it is you need. Tell them in advance. Prepare. Focus on your audience. I have students who are just so nervous speaking in front of people, and I understand. We all go through that. But do not think about your own anxiety. Think about your audience, because this is a performance. You are here for your audience. I am here for you. I want you to hear me. You want the people that you are talking to for the job talk to hear you. So think about them and forget yourself. And just like James says, when he talks about a narrative arc, my line is tell a story. Tell a story. Your research is fascinating to you. Make it fascinating to me. And if you speak in a monotone, and if you never relate it to anything anybody else is going to be interested in but yourself, that is a boring story. You want to tell a story that we will remember when you leave. And that's a great presentation. And it's not that you have to be exuberant necessarily at all. It means that you have to be, it has to make sense, it has to flow, it has to somehow be engaging. And the engagement part is really about the knowledge and the research that you're doing that is so interesting, and how it relates to what you want to do next, and why it will matter to the people in the room, how you connect to them. Again, preparation, there is no substitute for that, and then practice. Script it out. I actually encourage people to write it out. When I'm giving a formal talk, I sit at my computer and I write it out and I speak it out loud. Because sometimes I write beautiful sentences that I cannot get out of my mouth to save my soul. I just can't. Or it's a great sentence to read, but it is completely incomprehensible when it's spoken. So script it out and practice it out loud. And not quietly. Practice it out loud in the voice you're going to use. Practice in front of friends. Every one of you are in programs with other students, and you should be practicing in front of one another. And I encourage you to videotape yourself, which is a horrible thing to watch and even worse to listen to. But then you will catch yourself with your little mannerisms, and we all have them. I used to say, you know. My daddy broke me of that when he said, no, I don't know, you're telling me. Okay? But when I found out, my students told me, oh, but you say okay a lot. It's like, oh. So whatever it is, we all have these mannerisms. Figure out what yours are and try your best to break yourself of them. And you're not going to be able to do it if you don't watch yourself. So videotape yourself and then practice again and again. I am hiring a professional. I am not hiring a student. I do not want to hire someone that I'm going to have to then train because I'm already training a bunch of students. You come in and act like a professional, and then you're going to get the job. Did I skip one? Oh, I did both. Yeah, that's whether your job talk or your teaching demonstration, either one of those. After you do this, click forward, thank you, send thank yous. Individual, don't just send a global one to the department, and you don't have to thank every person you met. But you ought to thank the chair and the chair of the search committee. If a couple of the assistant professors took you to dinner and you had a very engaging and helpful conversation, send them individual thank yous. because in the process that follows afterwards, you might want to be able to get in touch with them. They gave some time to you. You want to thank them. This isn't all about you, it's about them too. And something special, something specific, I really appreciate that you were willing to take me to my favorite restaurant food that night. And what an engaging conversation we had, and I very much appreciate you sharing the information about schools. It'll be helpful to me as I move forward. Okay, so it's specific. If you have any lingering questions, if you forgot to find out what the teaching load is, it's okay to follow up with that. Hey, I just realized I left and I didn't ask this question. And whatever it is. There's probably not going to be any of those, but the thank yous are critical. Now, you know what? You got the job offer. Holy what? Now what? This is about negotiating the academic contract. Let me tell you what we've done to get you this job offer. First of all, we had to fight to get the job from the dean. Then we had to negotiate with one another in my department about what the ad would actually say. And we had to go through all the posting, and then we had to deal with this online system, and I had to read 100 files. And not just me, there's 4 of us on the search committee. And then we had to have 3 meetings to get to our short list of on phone interviews. And then we had to bring in 3 people, and every single person we brought in ate up a day and a half of our time collectively. Okay? Then we had to have another meeting to decide who we wanted to make the offer to. And now I'm calling you with and then we had to get the dean to okay the offer. And there was other bureaucratic paperwork, and now I'm calling you with the offer. So I got to tell you what, I put a lot of work into you, and I want you. That is the first thing you need to know. That's the best thing. We've done a lot of work to come to this decision that we want to hire you. I want to hire you. That's power on your behalf. So that's it. And here's the other thing, the glow of potential. I don't know anything bad about you. Because if I did, I would not be offering you a job. Okay? So at this point, you are all potential. And this gives you an opportunity to negotiate. I have some handouts for you, but I'm going to not give them to you at the moment. I'll give them to you later. Salary is forever. Unlike love. Unlike love, salary is forever, and it grows. Okay? So the most important thing to negotiate is your base salary. Any amount you're offered, you want to counter with a 10% increase to start with. But before you do that, when you come home from that institution, or actually when you go to that institution, you need to look up and find out what the salary structure is of that institution. And now that is pretty easy to do if that information is out there. You want to know the salary structure at that institution for that department. You want to know, if you're a woman, you want to know what the gender disparity is. And you can dig around and probably find it. On your interview, you might ask the assistant professors, are you happy? Just say, are you happy with your salary? Don't ask them what they make. Just say, how do you feel about that? Are you happy? How do you feel? Do you feel like you're paid fairly? Is there anything I should know? Okay? But you need to do the research, and I want to remind you, every single one of you is a researcher, and if you don't spend time doing this, then you should not be writing at all ever about your salary, ever. Okay? Base salary is forever. Once you get that nailed down, then everything else comes next in terms of a startup package, in terms of guaranteed summer money, maybe for the first couple of years. Anything else that you might want to be able to get. Script this out. This is the thing people are the most anxious, particularly women, are the most anxious about doing is negotiating salary. So again, script it out. How are you going to ask? What are you going to say? And anytime you ask for more, you've got to justify it. I appreciate this offer, and I understand that $60,000 sounds like a lot, but I just defended my PhD, my dissertation, so I am in fact done. I'm not an ABD, I am now done. In addition, as you noted, while I was there, I'm sort of advanced because I've already got 4 publications, and I've got 3 more under review, so I really think that I'm advanced. Plus, I've got 4 years of teaching experience. You justify why you're worth more. Okay? And again, practice it out loud. If you are a sports fan and you follow sports, or if you like music and you follow musicians, the way they get good is practicing. So you want to make sure that your presentations, your conversations, your negotiating requests are good, and you get good by practicing. A special note to women. Women on average are paid about 20% less than our men. Across the board, we can control for every single thing, and there it is. Women get paid less for no good, legitimate reason, but it is true. So women, you absolutely have to negotiate. And I want to tell you, it's hard because we've all been well socialized to be good girls and to not ask and to not bother anybody. And every bit of research tells us that women tend to underestimate their overall worth, including their skills, qualifications, abilities, and the value of their time. And they tend to overestimate the others' worth, skills, qualifications, and value of the other time. And women can tend to be very concerned about being nice and being liked and not bothering anybody and not, rocking the boat too much. And that works against us. That works against us. I've got a separate negotiating handout for women with a lot of resources on it. The first three especially, there's an article by me plus 2 books. Not by me, but 2 books that I highly recommended, but there's a ton of things. And there's a ton of stuff out there on the web. I encourage you to look for it. And if you don't, okay. But then know that it's going to hurt you. Women, and you all are going to have PhDs. Women with a bachelor's degree over the course of their lifetime are paid $1.2 million less than men. Did you hear me? $1.2 million less than men. And nothing explains it. It's not explained by part-time work because they have children. It's not explained by differential degrees. 1.2 million. Now, I will tell you that even if you do everything right in negotiating, you will get more, but you probably will not end up in the end. At some point, and you're going to find yourself behind men, but you don't want to be as far behind as you would if you did not do this negotiating. So, thank you. Fred's up.
All right, Fred.
Thank you very much, James and Jonah, for that introduction. We have a lot of people here. We need to make some room. So what I'm going to ask is that we push everything, all the chairs in the front 2 rows against that wall. We'll push all these chairs against that wall, so we'll have our space in the middle. Those of you who need to use the restroom right now, you can very carefully go out that door. Watch out for the wires. Turn left, and you'll find restrooms. Hurry up and come on back. But everybody else, push the chairs back.
And if you don't have a name tag, please come find me and I can give you one.
Thank you, Lee. Everyone needs a name tag, please. Yeah, so if you need a bio break, restroom, toilets are out that way. Watch out for the wires.
I like that. I like that, a bio break.
Have you not heard that before?
I've not heard that before.
Maybe it's a biology term. Maybe it's a biology term.
Is it?
Just move in here. There we go. You need lots of room.
So everybody has a name tag, correct? Yes. No.
Good. I saw some people duck out, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I don't know if they're going to the restroom or if they're running away in fear. It's okay. It's okay. So what we're going to do some group work, but the first group will be a big one. We'll have everybody involved, but then we'll probably break up into 2 groups of approximately 15 if I've counted things correctly. So let's everybody stand up, leave your stuff on your chair. Circles are best, but we don't have room for circles, so let's make an oval here. Just stand next to somebody you're going to be doing, put your arms out so you don't, you're about that far from them. Come over this way, right? So you have to have enough room. And I encourage everyone to participate.
Whoa. We thought we would get out.
In fact, it's a little weird to have people just watching this. Yeah. So just have room, and you can step forward, step backwards. I know we're a little bit limited. So if you need more room. So first thing we're going to do is we've been sitting, we've been listening to good stuff. We're just going to do some breathing. So everybody knows how to breathe, right? You take an inhale and you take an exhale. Who does yoga here? Okay, so Mona, you're expert breathers. You really know about breathing down to the abdomen, right, and all that, and out the nose. It doesn't matter. You can't do this wrong. So everybody, take a deep breath. And breathe it out. Good. Take a deep breath. And breathe it out. Keep going. Breath in and breath out. Good. Now, I'll explain this a little bit later, but right now you have put a little more oxygen into your lungs, and that's gone into your blood, and that's gone into your brain. Hello, ladies. Why don't you just find a place in the oval? And some people may have to step forward, backwards, or stagger yourself so you have room, because we're going to do a little bit of arm work later. So breathing. Breathing is good before you give a talk. Now, you may say, how in the heck am I going to breathe if I'm sitting in a room waiting for someone else to talk? This is not just for your job talk, by the way. This is going to work for any talk. Well, just do what we call secret breathing. You can do this in your chair. Right? Nobody will know. All right. What we're going to do next, you can't do it in your chair. And stretch. So stretch. Whatever your favorite stretch is. Yeah, bend over and touch your toes. You can even combine, figure out whatever arm motion you want to do. Inhale. Exhale. All right, just work out the kinks. Now, what you're doing is part of what actors do to stay relaxed on stage, but simultaneously stay focused. And that's what you want to be doing when you give a talk. There'll be more about that later. But right now, we're going to start the name game. We're going to play it just going around the oval here, but then we're going to break up into two groups. And this is not very complicated, and if you need help, look down at your name tag. Hello, my name is Fred. So not only did I say hello, but I tried, a lot of people here, but I tried quickly to look at everyone. All right, so Mona, would you show us next?
Hello, my name is Mona.
Hello, my name is James.
Hello, my name is Emma.
Hello, my name is Mindy.
Hello, my name is Mila.
Hello, my name is Heidi.
Hello, my name is Abby.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lee.
Hello, my name is Frank.
Hi, my name is Amanda.
Hello, my name is Ali.
Hello, my name is Amy.
Hello, my name is Pragati.
Hello, my name is No.
Hi, my name is Kate.
Hello, my name is Sankar.
Hi, my name is Grace.
Good. Give yourself a hand. Now we're going to break up into two groups. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Let's have a group of 8 right there. I think that's 8. If not, then we'll have our other group here. And so, Mona, can I ask you to be in charge of that group here? We need a couple. Would you two go over to that group? Okay, thanks. Good. So I'm going to, okay, now form a circle. Form a circle. Yeah. Okay, good. We're going to play the name game. And what we're going to do is simply repeat what we did before. I'm going to say my name, and then I'm going to pass off to Hamid. And then Hamid will say his name, and he'll pass off to Ali. So I'll say, Fred. And then you'll turn.
Hamid.
Ali.
We.
All right, so you get the idea. Let's Mona, would you start over here? Mona. Good. Okay, we got all the way around that one time. All right. Now we're going to wait for them. And
James.
good. Now you're going to do it the other direction. So,
Mona.
Fred.
James.
Heidi.
Abby.
Right.
No.
Ellie.
Hamid.
Good job. Give yourself a hand. Okay. Get through it? Okay. Now it's going to get a little more. It's going to get a little tricky because I'm going to give my name, but then I'm going to say Hamid's as I can pass off to him. So it'll be Fred Hamid's. And you say no. You say Hamid Ali. Okay. Fred Hamid. Here we go.
Hamid. Ali.
Ali.
Mona. Grace.
Grace.
Oh, they started on Heidi. Nora.
But
Good. Okay. Now, did you guys get through that? Okay. Good. I mean, if the names are hard to pronounce, it becomes more difficult.
James.
Good. Okay. Now, we just were going in a circle, but now it's going to get tricky. So just watch us. Fred, Frank.
Frank. Hamid.
Hamid. Abby.
Okay, so just bounce around as you can. Yeah.
Mona. Amal. Heidi. Nora.
no.
No.
Grace. Kate.
Welcome to it.
Hamid. Frank.
Kate. Forgot.
Nobody's going to take my name. Gary, James.
Ali. James.
Fred.
Second.
Fred, we.
Hamid. Aman.
Mindy.
Keep going.
James.
James. Grace.
Frank.
Nora. Ali. Heidi.
Kate.
Fred, Frank.
Kate.
James. Hamid.
James.
Hamid. Frank.
Good. Okay. Thanks very much. Good. All right.
Grace. Mindy. Amal.
Okay. Good. Give yourselves a hand. Now, how do you feel relative to 5 minutes ago? A little more relaxed? Okay, good. What did we do? We breathed, not a lot. We stretched, not a lot. But and we're a little playful. So that's good. That's things you want to remember as we move on. Now, what I want you to do, and we'll do it in our group, and you'll do it in your group, is in 2 or 3 words, talk about what you are most apprehensive about, what you're most concerned about your job talk. All right, so just go around. What are you most apprehensive about your job talk, Frank?
Gaining Dobbs.
Grace. What are you most
Gaining Dobbs.
apprehensive about your job talk?
Mostly about how I can present myself or like put my ideas
Can
and
see other people in other people's eyes.
explain to them what I'm capable of. Or
You don't want to leave
what
it
my
dry.
is all about.
Okay, good. That's something
Let's
to
turn
celebrate.
around.
Good. Anyone else?
Kate?
The public speaking aspect is
Anxiety.
terrifying for me. And lack of experience in teaching in front of a classroom and finding places that can match that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Nora? Exhausted? Yeah.
My
So you're concerned
biggest
about being
apprehension
exhausted.
is about English not being my
Yeah.
first language, even though I know it well, but I don't think I articulate my thoughts very well in English as well as I do in my native language. That's my biggest concern. So I need to practice a bit with my responses.
Okay. We have one ask you.
Well, for me, it's coming out. I'm like always up here. It's like, I'm a very.
That's a good point.
I didn't mellow down.
Right.
everybody to share just a
No, but I'm going to take a wild guess, based upon what I've heard here, and what I've heard in similar situations, is that there's apprehension, there's fear, there's anxiety, and whether it's about presenting yourself in a good way, whether it's about working in a non-native language, whether it's about looking at people in the eyes, that all of us have, to one extent or another, concerns about speaking in front of groups. This is perfectly normal. This is perfectly normal. And what the purpose of this micro workshop is today is to work with you on that fear. Now, there is controversy about who said it and whether the statistics are correct, but it's at least a well-known saying that many people are more afraid of speaking in public than they are of death. And whether that's true or not, there still are elements of truth in it, I think. And so, respectfully, I will disagree with Mona, who told you among many, many great things. Thanks for all the practice stuff. That's absolutely right. But Mona said, forget about your anxiety. Instead, work with the audience. I don't think I can forget about my anxiety. And so what I do and what I teach is ways for you to reduce your anxiety, to dissipate your anxiety, with the idea that it will always be there. Now, I know that you've probably heard, well, if you aren't a little nervous about playing in the big game, or if you are a little nervous about your job talk, then maybe you really don't have the energy you should. And that works for me. I still get nervous. I'm a little nervous right now. I can tell because my mouth is getting dry. And what does that mean? Whenever I give a talk, I always make sure I have some water nearby. So understand what your human frailties are and work with them. Well, the way that we'll try a little bit today working with these things is a process that I've been working with the master. This is Jennifer Alonso in the Department of Communications and Theater Arts here. Jennifer and I have worked up a course we call Acting for Scientists, Acting for Professionals, and we've taught it to university students before, one time in a 5-week summer session and another time in a standard 1-semester session. And today we have 1 hour. So you're not going to get everything. But what I'll try to do is introduce you to a couple of ideas that I think you might find interesting. I can give you some material afterward, and you'll get a feel for the approach that we use. Now, what we'll work on now are two major things major categories that we have, and the first is voice, and then the second will be carriage. I'll explain carriage later. But we'll want to start out, and we can do this as a group. You're fine as you are. You don't need this much room. If you're going to play golf, if you're going to play tennis, if you're going to go jogging, what do you usually do first? You usually warm up, right? Yeah. How do we talk? Do we talk with our feet? No, we already did some stretching. We already warmed up for your feet. So how do you talk? You talk with your mouth and your lips. And so if you're shown these, we call these articulators. And so you need to exercise your articulators. So just, and I should say, if any of this is you don't feel like doing it, you don't have to do it. But just don't interfere with anybody else who wants to participate. So if you want to warm up your mouth, just rub your face. Yeah. Okay. Good. Now what? Good. And if you're like me, you like to rub your temples. I don't do that enough. Whatever you pull your ears. We talk with our tongues, right? So as much as this one. This not. Left. All right. Up. Okay. So we're getting that. And you're going to talk with your head too. So if you haven't stretched it out before, exercise your neck. Good. And you can come up with more if you like to rub here. That's fine. The point is that you are opening up your mouth and you're getting your tongue ready to do work. So now we can go to making some noises. But first we're going to do a little more warm-up with standard tongue twisters. Now, for some of you, it might be that English is itself a tongue twister. So you have tongue twisters in your native language, and maybe you want to use those. But here's a great one in English. And I always mess it up, so it's a great one for me. Toy boat. Toy boat. 2 syllables, but the idea is to stack on the same fast. So say with me. Toy boat. 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 Good. I'm hearing a couple of boings every once in a while. So toy boat can become toy boy. Right. And there's 100 of these. There's how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? You know your she sells seashells by the seashore, and you know many of these. Which are your favorite ones? Those are the ones to practice. What are you doing? You're warming up your voice, and you're improving timbre, and you're improving resonance. But we don't have time for all those things today. Now, what's the hardest word you have to say in your talk? For me, I'm an oceanographer, but I'm a biologist first. I've grown up speaking Latin binomials, Homo sapiens or Calanectes sapidus. So these are easy for me to say. But you know what's hard for me to say? You know a word that's particularly hard for me to say? It's particularly, because especially with a dry mouth, and I grab this, yes, especially with a dry mouth, it's really hard to say. I never say particularly when I'm talking at a big convention, because I know I'm going to screw up. So what do I say? I say especially, right? So that's my little trick. It means the same thing. But when I'm practicing, when I'm warming up, particularly. All right. So what's your hardest word? Mindy, what's your hardest word, Mindy?
I don't know. I haven't done enough talks to know my hardest words.
Okay. Anybody have a hardest word that you know of?
Practicable.
Practicable? Yeah, that's
Very simple.
Okay, so Frank would want to practice practicable. So it's all practicable. Practicable. Okay. Yeah. If it's easy for you, it's not a practice word. If it's hard for you, it becomes a practice word. So find your own practice word. All right. Good. Now we're going to do an A-B game. All that means is that we're going to pair up with somebody. So just turn your left, turn your right, find somebody, figure out what your pairs are.
I'll go this way, sorry.
Good, you're my partner. Okay, good. Fragati. Okay, good. All right, so Fragati and I are going to continue our warm-ups. Oh, first we have to say, do you want to be A or B? Do you want to be person A or person B?
A.
She wasn't B. Okay, who's the A's? Half of you should be A's. A's, raise your hand. Or did you want to be A's, raise your hand. Okay, so and then B's, let's see if everybody gets it right. B's, raise your hand. Okay, good. All right, now the A's are going to be, at least for the first round, the A's are going to be the boss. All right, they're the boss. And here's your tool. All right? Show me. Yeah. Now, what Prabhati is going to do is tell me that where the tone of my voice should be. And so, if you raise your hand, and I'm just going to give a sound. So, Perfect. That's great. All right. So, A's, you're the boss. You're the conductor, and just find a tone that you like. If you want to sing it, that's great. But just right, so you can.
All of my hands with your tone.
Is it working? Is it working? Okay, good. All right, now we're going to switch. Now the bees are in charge. You ready? Yes? Okay. All right. All right. What I forgot to do at the beginning is acknowledge those who are on WebEx. I know a lot of this is probably very fun to watch, but you don't have a partner, and so it becomes more difficult for you. But I hope you can do the tones with us. Now, who's a singer? Well, I'm not a singer, but sometimes I like to just sing a little bit and practice moving my voice down. And we're coming up really high. Now, of course, I'm never going to talk singing it halfway like this, but what am I doing? I'm exercising my voice. If you play soccer, if you play football, you do drills where sometimes you have weights on your legs. If you swim, you wear apparatus. You would never that slow you down, but what they make your arms stronger. You would never compete with these things on you, but you do it because it makes you stronger. And so, sing your talk a little bit in front of the mirror might be a great way for you to find out more about what your words are and what they mean. So again, we're gonna A/B, and but here's what we're going to start with. It's going to be varying our speeds. Hello, my name is Fred Dobbs. I'm from the Department of Medieval Zooplankton in the College of Dress for Success. It's a pleasure for me to be here today and addressing you on my job interview. All right, so you're going to come up with something like that, and you're going to say it to your partner. So for God, no, actually, we're going to switch partners a little bit. So what you're going to do is the 15-second introduction that you will give, and you've practiced it, right? And so this is the first 15 seconds of your talk. You are addressing the A or B partner, but pretend that partner is the audience where you're applying for a job. All right? So you state your name, where you're from, and how pleased you are to be here today. Just something like that. So A's will first talk to their B's. Okay.
Just in your regular voice.
Yeah, regular voice, regular. Mm-hmm.
I don't want as a sociologist, we know that there are ghostly societies, so there are ghostly parties.
Good. Have both people gone? Okay. All right. Now, hello. My name is Fred Dobbs, and I'm from Old Dominion University. You're practicing. This is wackadoodle. You'll never do this. But what you're doing is you're finding out what your voice can do. Your voice can do far more than you imagine. And this is what we're trying to bring out from you, is to make you a more engaged speaker. And believe it or not, exercises like these will help. So repeat, except now, I lowered my voice too. Now go as slowly as possible. In fact, cut it off after about one sentence because we won't have time enough to go A and B. Okay? So begin. Great.
Can't do it that way.
Different.
I do
All right, done? Have we gone through both? All right. Guess what we're going to do next? We're going to do that introduction as fast as we possibly can, okay? Is everybody ready? Go! Hello, my name is Hey, that was great. That was great. All right, so you should be really relaxed now. Wouldn't it be great to be this relaxed? You're this warmed up is what you are. To be this warmed up and then step in front of the audience and give your talk because you're ready now. Voice, mental state, and I hope you're more relaxed. I really do.
We're all going to do this before our presentations.
Yeah, do it as a group. So we've been having you talk. What I want to talk about now is the importance of silence. All right, I've heard from two of you already. I talk too fast. It's sometimes hard for people to understand because I just keep talking. Okay, this is an issue for some people. And one way to minimize that is to appreciate the value of silence in your talk. And I'm not talking about a minute, although 5 seconds in front of an audience without saying anything can, I know for some of you, seem forever. But stopping every once in a while has two advantages that I'll talk about here. The first is, the first is that it helps the audience with what I call landmarks in your talk. So you're all scholars, you know what, your stuff, and you want to tell us all about it. But if you get too excited about it, you've got part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. But if you just blast through there, I use the term machine gun, through it, then it may be hard for us to know, is she on part 1? This sounds different than it did before. But what if you finish, and especially if it's with a slide that finishes a section, and you pause? Next, I want to talk about, well, you've very clearly given a signal to the audience that you're changing gears a little bit, and the audience will appreciate that you're moving on to something else. All right, if you say, and so these results showed that indeed, when the cat was away, the mouse would play. And then the next experiment we did, blah, 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 blah. I can't figure out what's going on, right? So use pauses to let the audience know that you're moving on to another subject. And the other time to use pauses is when you want to make a point. Because I can talk a lot about some of the bacteria that I study, Vibrio vermificus and Vibrio parahemolyticus and talk about digestive issues that they have and everything. But what will really get your attention is when I say, these bacteria can kill you. All right, so I paused, and then I had a couple of words that I really want people to, and people think, oh man, that's serious, yeah. So let's see. Okay, I'm not sure we don't have time to do what I would like to do, but I'm going to make up some. Let's say, because I just read about this in the newspaper. Scientists were using remote sensing, and they found some archaeological sites in Newfoundland, I think, at least maritime Canada, up there someplace, where they think were the first Viking. Some of the first Viking settlements. Yeah. They hadn't found them before, so that they used this. So can you imagine some nerd to the max, guy or gal from NASA that does this remote sensing and could just talk on and on about high frequency radio frequency, blah blah blah, mapping. But here's what he or she could say. We're using this to find ancient civilizations, and that's really what he's doing or she's doing. So that's the exciting part. Make sure that you take what is most exciting to you about your field, about your particular part of your field, and let the audience know that with silence beforehand. All right? So think about silence as a tool you can use. All right, that's voice. Now we want to talk about carriage, and simply put, carriage is posture. It's more than that, but it's how we carry ourselves. And I'm sure you've heard stand up straight. That's good, but how do you stand up straight? Well, one trick is that you can pretend you have a balloon tied to a string on your head. All right? And what that balloon is going to hold your head high, but you don't want to be tiptoeing around. So make sure your feet are well anchored, shoulders shoulder length apart. And here's the trick. Don't lock your knees. If you lock your knees, you're actually in danger of falling over, either because of imbalance or every once in a while you see the what do they call it, the British guards with the giant hats, the beefeaters. Every once in a while you see a beefeater who's flattened out on the ground because he's passed out. Just staying tightly at attention for too long is a strain on the body. So you want to be standing erect, but you don't want to be stiff. All right. So just think about that as we go through this. Now that's when you're giving your talk, but beforehand, you can energize yourself in a way that seems incredulous, but it's really true. And first we're just going to feel it for ourselves a little bit. So get back into your AB partners. Ali, you're my partner now because I'm in the... All right, so what I'm going to do, let's see, you'll be the A, and I'll be the B. So that all you Bs, what you're going to do is you're going to make yourself as small as possible for 30, oh, did we lose? Oh, okay, I lost track. Make yourself as small as possible for about 20 seconds. In front of your partner. So I'm going to be small. So just how do you get small? Just small. Yeah, hunch your shoulders. Yeah. No, just you just watch it. You just watch it. How small are you? Okay. All right. Now you just say it. So switch off the B's or A's, whichever one I track. Yeah. All right. Good. You feel like this is the way you want to do it? No. All right, now I'm going to hit big. Okay, A's hit big. Get as big as you can. Big. Now everybody get big. Come on, everybody, get big. Put your hands up. Big. Well, you can growl if you want. I like that. Getting big. Okay. Now this is how you want to be feeling when you give your talk. You won't give it this way, but this is how you want to feel. Now here, thank you, Ari. Here is what I've learned in my working with Jennifer Alonso, and I'll give you the name of this at the end on a piece of printed material. There's a woman named Amy Cuddy who's a scientist. She studies hormones and body chemicals. And Amy Cuddy has shown us that what she calls a power pose, whether you believe it or not, actually changes hormones in your body. It increases hormones associated with well-being, and it decreases the hormones associated with anxiety. And so right there, you've got it. It's Wonder Woman. Now, some of you are maybe too young to remember Wonder Woman, but put your hands on your hips and shoulders back, head up. Do that. This is at your hotel room or in the bathroom. And do that for 30 seconds, 60 seconds before you give your talk. And this is going to improve your performance. Amy Cuddy, Power Pose, she has a TED Talk that is just amazing. So, as I said, I've written this down. I'll give you the TED Talk. Or I shall give her your name, and you can find it. So, she's just in the past year published a book called Presence, Presence. You don't have to be a woman to do this. You can be a man, and it works as well. I frankly am skeptical, and yet I look at her data. She's a scientist, I'm a scientist. I look at her data and I say, yeah, these hormones are changing. It's incredible. So it's the easiest thing in the world, I think, to find 30 seconds, 60 seconds before your talk and do a power pose. If your power pose is like this, that's fine. All right? So that's something to do as well. Okay.
Can I say that you should also do that before the phone interviews as well?
Excellent.
And before you respond to the negotiating call.
And before you go into your roommate and say, you owe money on the phone bill.
I sometimes have to do it to recharge before my kids come back in the classroom.
Okay, good. So some of you are already using this. This is a great technique. Even if you don't feel confident, pretend you are. And Amy Cuddy's technique will help you. Good. All right. What do I do with my hands? What do I do with my hands? I don't know. So your hands can be your friend. Your hands can be distracting. If you've got robot arms going, then the audience is going to have a hard time figuring out what's going on. Do not give your talk, especially the men, not give your talk like this, especially playing with your keys and your change. And don't do the John Wayne and give your talk this way. This is sort of a power pose maybe, but it's not the way that you want to project a professional image. So what do you do with those hands? So let's first do nothing with your hands. Now, you're all scholars. You all have special fields. You are specialists in your fields. What do you most love about that? Let's do the partner exercise. And what I want you to do, let your hands just be hands. And they're not going to move. Just let them hang down at your side. And using the A-B technique, tell your partner what you most love about your field, your research, a particular experiment, a paper that you've written. So tell your partner what you most love. And have we got everybody paired out? Okay, thank you. Let your hands be hands. No movement. So you went from face? Was that hard?
It's hard to answer.
All right, good. Let me gently finish your sentence. Finish your sentence now. All right. That was hard for some of you. I saw you inadvertent. I saw some of this. I saw some of this. All right. So if you would please have that same exchange, except I want you to pick one time in that 20, 30 seconds where you are going to gesture. So make your gesture accompany, underscore, reinforce the meaning of a word you choose. So think for a minute about where in that 20-second explanation you would like to use one gesture. Think for a minute, and now try it out. A.D., please. Good. So I saw some of you using one gesture, and I saw some of you who just couldn't help it, but they had to keep using gestures. And that's fine. Just be cognizant of how you use your hands and use them to good effect. All right. Good. The end. No. I'm talking about how we end the talk. The end. So you've given this great talk, and when you end, you want to end definitively, and you want to end graciously. So here's so the final experiment showed that phosphate levels decrease when the phytoplankton decreased.
The end.
Is it? Yeah. And you've seen talks at end. You're in the audience. You said, it should be done. Should we leave now? But, you don't want to end like that, all right? You want to end definitively. And so I hope I've convinced you, indeed, that when the cat is away, the mice will play. Folks, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I look forward to questions and cookies afterward. Yeah, it's very clear. It's very clear that I've finished, right? So make sure when you finish your talk, and usually we have slides, often too many of them, but say your final sentence or two. Make sure it's a bang-up one, because you will rehearse, practice it. Make sure it's a bang-up one, know exactly what words you're going to say, and then be gracious. Thank them for their time, for listening, and however you want to do it. That's your own personal way to do it. All right? A.B., practice, the end.
And so we add to the later choice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're not finished? Okay.
for the better health of the family. Thank you.
So, I've noticed certainly here, very easy to learn about. I'm not going to talk about that, but I'll clue you into Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm taking the questions.
I really feel like we need to Oh, I 4 hours.
All right, was the talk successfully ended? Okay. Let me thank all of you for participating, having fun, and as we mill around at the end here, I've got some handouts from Jennifer Alonso, as I said, my colleague who is much better at this than I am, and she's got a website that's going. I don't have enough, as it turns out, but let me tell you about these, and then I'll write up my email address, and you can ask me if you want. So here, Jennifer has compiled the top 10 things you can do to make sure you do not die during your presentation. Useful, right? Useful. And in one of our courses, we asked the students to write down the attributes of the best speakers. And we took all those adjectives and put them into a word cloud. So this is available to some of you too. And again, I don't have enough, but ping me and I can get it to you. So the best speakers are prepared, because they've rehearsed. They're understandable. They're passionate. They're engaging. They're confident. They're relaxed. And so these are adjectives that you want to pin onto yourself as you give your job talk. Finally, the Amy Cuddy's TED Talk is referenced here. And if you really want to get in with what Jennifer's doing, you can get her networking book if you text level up to 44222. I've got that written down here. All right? So we'll hand over to you for the finale here then.
But Fred, if you could also provide me the copies of those, I could also make those available.
You want electronically?
Some electronically.
Certainly.
Since there will also be an archive of this
okay.
particular event on the PFF website.
Super.
So, you know, if your friends that were not able to participate, that they'll be able to watch us all as we practice and be relaxed. Watch that in memoriam. But we had really good presentations, and we do have a few more minutes. If anybody had questions about process or had questions about the kind of looking at job ads, about thinking about what the content of a presentation, or even specific questions for Fred, now would be a great time to ask those. We were all too relaxed. Oh, Abby.
I have a question about the thank you notes post-interview. And it's about the best medium for communicating them. Is it email? Is it a note? Is it a phone call?
I'd say today email is fine. But email them individually. Don't just do a blanket email to everybody.
And those work best if they're thoughtful and specific.
Yeah.
It's easy to look generic in email.
Yeah. I have a question about salary.
Yeah.
I've looked online at some different job applications, and they're so involved and so lengthy, and you have to tailor make them to, the specific job. I would like to know that I'm in the ballpark of, or that they're in the ballpark of what I want before I spend 10 hours tweaking everything that I have.
Certainly. So what I have here, I have two handouts. One is general on negotiating. The other is some particular stuff for women. But the AAUP and also the Chronicle of Higher Ed, which is free from the library website, will tell you what the salary averages are on a particular campus. You can also find them for particular disciplines. And then the other thing is that you should ask. People should ask. Yeah, you have one. And the one that's one page is the one for women. So you should ask your friends who in your department who are getting jobs. You should ask your faculty here. When you go to conferences and you meet other students, you should ask them what they know about salaries. You should not call the institution and say, can you tell me what the salary range is? You should not do that. You can ask that question on, toward the end of the job interview with the chair. Oh, just by the way, Gina, are you able to tell me what the salary range is? You don't want to know the salary range.
In some professional organizations, and I know like the American Psychological Association, collect data on salaries in different regions and in kind of the state level, so you can get an idea of what the norms are for that position. That could be very helpful.
Your homework.
Yeah, and you got to do your homework. The other thing I would say is that you're going to write a template of your letter that you're going to tweak depending on the institution. So it's not like you're starting all over with every application that you have. Yeah, and the reality is that you probably, for most assistant professor jobs within a discipline, you're not talking about a salary difference more than $5,000 to $10,000 at the most. Now, except when you're talking about elite institutions.
Tailoring applications, it sounds like a lot of work, but it's surprisingly easy to do.
Once you get
and it goes a very long way if the search committee gets an application and the impression is, oh, well, this person's interested in us. And they know what they're doing. I think that's really helpful.